Joining me now in the studio to discuss the reactions to Prime Minister Netanyahu's address to the Knesset is Ambassador Yoram Ettinger, former Chargé d'Affaires and Congressional Liaison in the Israeli Embassy in Washington. Ambassador, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
The Palestinians, and many others as well, have dismissed Prime Minister Netanyahu's offer of a building freeze in exchange for Palestinian recognition of Israel as a Jewish state. They say Netanyahu didn't believe for a moment the Palestinians would agree. What do you think?
Well, I think there are two sides to the coin. One is the Palestinian stance, which once again has been exposed. The issue is not the size of Israel, but the existence of a Jewish state in the midst of what they consider to be abode of Islam, unacceptable for the Palestinians. But then there is the Israeli side, and it raises many, many question marks. Why would Israel exchange its own cradle of history in return for a Palestinian statement in an area where on words one does not pay custom? Abu Mazen may find tomorrow a very creative statement to suggest maybe he recognizes Israel as a Jewish state. In return for that, would Netanyahu give away the cradle of Jewish history, which happens to be also very critical to Israel's own security?
Ambassador Ettinger, the EU Foreign Policy Chief, Catherine Ashton, she's already reacted to Netanyahu's insistence on recognition of Israel as a Jewish state. And she said that Israel must be sure and safeguard the rights not only of just the Jewish citizens, but of all of its citizens. Do you think all this talk of a Jewish state is damaging to Israel's image in the eyes of the world?
Well, it seems to me that the EEC, the EU, should talk with some Arabs in Jerusalem. They dread the possibility of Israeli giveaway of Arab neighborhoods in Jerusalem. They want to stay inside Israel. They don't want to be part of the Palestinian Authority. They should talk with Arabs, with Palestinians who jump over the fence, over the wall into Israeli territory, because every time Israel hints a possibility of concession in Judea Samaria, right away they jump into Israel. Why? Because they appreciate democracy in Israel. They appreciate freedom in Israel. And as Foreign Minister Lieberman said, and rightly so, maybe it's time for the Europeans to deal with their own issues in Europe rather than stick their nose into our business here. They haven't been helpful, at least we haven't seen it since Oslo, of any evidence that the Europeans have even advanced the resolution 1 inch forward.
Many pundits are saying that Netanyahu is playing a waiting game. He's waiting for the congressional midterms in November. Is that what you think is happening?
Well, I hope the Prime Minister finally realizes that Israel's bastion of support in the U.S. happens to be the U.S. Congress. There is no doubt that after the midterm election in 2 weeks, on November 2nd, we're going to have a much more pro-Israel Congress than we had before. We'll have many more congressmen, scores of them, who are more sensitive to tradition and to religion, to patriotism, anti-UN, anti-terrorism. That bodes well for Israel.
Do you think this congressional change will force Obama to change his Middle East policies?
What may force him is an Israeli stance which is willing to defy Obama and stick by its own red lines rather than keep transforming its own red lines into pink lines. Every Israeli concession is only emboldening Obama to stick to his position.
The Arab League has given the U.S. administration 1 more month to try to restart the peace talks. What do you think will happen at the end of that month?
Well, nothing will happen. Arabs have never proven themselves to care too much about Palestinians. In fact, Arabs have shed much more Palestinian blood than has Israel. Arabs never gave Palestinians what Israel, unfortunately, intends to do, namely independence. Egypt could have done it. Jordan could have done it. The Arab League could have done it. They never did that. They showered the Palestinians with rhetoric, but never with deeds, never with resources.
Ambassador Yoram Ettinger, always a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you.